Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro RPG. And we've reached the end of another poll, which the results are put up there. And it's been won by Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition, which I kind of thought was going to be a popular choice, because we've had a few videos on various Warhammer 1st edition books, and they've always been amazingly successful. But I wasn't really prepared for how successful it was going to be. It wins with 45% of the vote, which is actually down because it spent much of the week at over 50%. More than half of the people who were voting up until the last few days thought Warhammer was the one that I should do. But anyway, let's go over to their stop and have a look at the book. So, this is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition by Green and Ronin Publications, which came out in 2002, in concert with Black Library, who is the publishing arm of Games Workshop. You see, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1st edition had been brought out by Games Workshop when they were in their role-playing phase, when they were doing reprints of, or British reprints of Call of Cthulhu, of Paranoia, of RuneQuest, and various other games. And they kind of got out of that because their money is in miniatures, so they went mainly over to wargaming instead, even though Games Workshop itself had its foundation being the British wing of TSR, publishing Dungeons & Dragons for the UK market. But Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, after Games Workshop stopped publishing it, went over to a company called Hog's Head, who kept on publishing it and released a bunch of lovely source books for it. But they themselves stopped publishing. They didn't go bankrupt or out of business in that way. It's just that it was very much powered by one man, and he got a bit sick of the market. He was making his money elsewhere, so he shut down Hog's Head and returned the licenses for Warhammer back to Games Workshop and Slay Industries back to Nightfall Games. And lots of the small imprint books that he did, Baron Munchausen, Power Play, Puppetland, all went back to their authors as well. Actually, Baron Munchausen was James Wallace, who ran Hogshead's own game. But anyway, Fantasy Roleplay then went out of publication, and this was a proper 2nd edition for it. Whereas Hog's Head had only reprinted the original book and come out with a bunch of source books, this was a book to update the game slightly. And it is a 2nd edition. It's not a reinvention of the game, as so many turn out to be these days, where they totally revamp the rules. I believe 3rd edition and 4th edition of Warhammer are more in that vein. But 2nd edition is just an attempt to revamp the rules and bring them slightly up to date. Lots of balancing issues are dealt with. Let's have a look at the back cover, and I'll keep talking about it as we go through. Adventure awaits the old world, a dark and grim place filled with peril and riven by war. From the teeming cities of the Empire to the elf-haunted forests, to the lofty crags of the World's Edge Mountains, where dwarfs battle with goblins and their vile kin. A shadow hangs over the world, cast by the dark corrupting hand of chaos. All along its borders, the old world's greatest nation, the Empire, seeks to hold back this dark tide. But even with the Empire, there are enemies. Twisted cultists seek to bring about the Empire's fall. Cold-hearted beastmen stalk the forests. Loathsome skaven ratmen spread plague and sickness from their subterranean lairs. In Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, you're unlikely heroes in a grim world of perilous adventure. You venture into the dark corners of the Empire and deal with the threats that others cannot or will not face. You'll probably die alone in some festering hellhole, but maybe, just maybe, you'll survive foul mutants, horrible diseases, insidious plots, sanity-blasting rituals to reap fate's rewards. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is a complete game. All you need to play is in this book, some dice and a group of friends. Inside these covers you'll find a quick system for character creation. You can make a character in less than half an hour and jump right into the game. A simple yet robust set of rules that let you handle everything from social interaction to chaos mutations. A unique career-based system of character advancement and over 100 careers, from assassin and bone picker to trollslayer and zealot. Complete rules for magic, covering both arcane and divine orders and over 175 spells. Power can be had, but beware Tzeentch's curse. Details of the Empire and the Old World, from the social order to religion and belief. A complete introductory adventure through the Drakwild. A new short story by renowned Gaunt's Ghosts author Dan Abnet. Welcome to the role-playing game of the Warhammer world. Death and glory await. And it kind of details there that we're keeping many of the good features of the first edition. So the careers are there. And the grim setting, the, how does it phrase it as it did on the back cover? A grim world of perilous adventure. It's darker than Dungeons & Dragons. It's a fantasy world. You've got elves, dwarves, and halflings. But where in Dungeons & Dragons you'll be a noble paladin battling a dragon in an ancient dungeon created by some wizard, in Warhammer you're far likely to be a bodyguard or a rat catcher who is fighting cultists in the sewers of your local town. And because you're in the sewers, any open wounds likely to lead to infection and illness and death. Lives are cheap in Warhammer. It's a lot easier to die. It's a lot easier to pick up disadvantages. And it's part of the fun of the game. It's a much darker, more gritty, gruesome game. Now, opening up, we can see they've improved the publishing quality. The original first edition was basically just black and white. There were some colour plates in there, but most of the book was just black and white, ordinary paper, whereas this is glossy and nice and lots of lovely desktop publishing quality. We're in the early 2000s after all. Now, something I noticed very quickly was this is 253 pages long, compared to the 350 of the first edition. So I went through and I looked to see where we were losing content. Now, the magic system is 10 pages shorter in second edition, but they've revamped it heavily. Religion and belief is exactly the same size. Character creation and careers are difficult to judge because they were all bundled together in first edition under the players section of the book, but they appear to be roughly the same. The big bit that I noticed is the section here on the Empire, which is only 213 to 223. It's 10 pages long, whereas in first edition, the Warhammer World section of the book was 90 pages long. So if we've lost 10 pages in Magic and 80 pages for World, that's 90 pages, which is roughly how much we've lost. Now, I think that's kind of bad. Only having 10 pages of background in your game isn't much. I definitely think it's a loss. But I'm guessing because there are so much Warhammer books out there, you know, if you want to know about elves, you can go out and pick the war book Elves for Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Anyway, carrying on through, we start off with Life After Death by Dan Abnet. A nice little short story there. Again, lovely, lovely artwork. While first edition had great artwork in black and white, these are really gorgeous colour pictures. What is the Warhammer world? What's in this book? An example of play upon the matter of the Empire. It's really nicely set out, lovely colour plates, as I said. We're on to character creation, the 4 races. We've got your dwarves, your elves, your halflings, and your humans. And I like the basicness of that. I hate all the extra species crammed into Dungeons & Dragons these days, where you've got Genasi and... oh, what's the demon ones, and so many other. I was in a game where somebody was playing a Birdman. While it can be fun, I think populating the world too much with these dilutes it. I do like the Tolkien purity of just having a few species working alongside each other. The good races. And we can see here the career section is pretty much intact. We've got the starting careers, so you don't choose what you're going to be. In Dungeons & Dragons, you'll choose to be an elf ranger, a dwarf warrior, etc. Whereas in Warhammer, you choose your race, but then you roll randomly. So you can roll and be a dwarf hunter. So you've chosen to be a dwarf, but he ends up being a hunter, whereas you had the idea that perhaps you wanted to play a wizard. It can be a lot of fun. We've got some basic questions here to ask yourself about your character, you know, who are your best friends and your worst enemies, what are your prized possessions, what do you love, hate. We've got a sample character sheet. We've got background charts so we can randomly roll for height, weight, hair colour, distinguishing marks, number of siblings, star sign, age in years. And I do like all this. I have to admit, since they took a lot of this out of Dungeons & Dragons, my character sheets tend to be bare when I start off play because I haven't quite got a grasp on what the character is yet. Whereas if it's randomly selected, then at least I've got a place to start. We've even got random names here. We've got the careers. So the real positive system of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, we've got agitators, apprentice wizards. Now, you've got your basic start for being a character, and then as you add a career, you can increase. So the agitator can increase his weapon skill, his ballistic skill, his agility, intelligence, and his W, which is wounds. WP is willpower, so W is wounds. And we go through that way. As you complete a career, gaining everything you need to, getting all the skills, you then got your career exits. And they list career entries as well. So if you decide that my aim is to become a bailiff, you can see the path through. You need to be a bodyguard or a jailer first. So you can create paths to certain classes. Now, they have done a lot in balancing these. In first edition, they were terribly, terribly unbalanced. Some of the careers, basically, you would fly through because you only picked up one or two things from them. But they are far more balanced here. And when we get on to the advanced careers, I'll skip through these. You know, hunters, initiates, Kithband warriors, Kislevite Kossar, marines, militiamen, messengers, outlaws, nobles. Of course, you've got the trappings that you need to have. So if you want to be a Norse berserker, which is only a starting one, you need light armor, a bottle of spirits, a great weapon or shield. If you want to become an outlaw, you can go through any of these. You can go from being an innkeeper to being an outlaw. You need a bow with 10 arrows, light armor, and a shield. You can be the town rat catcher, a pit fighter. You can even start off play as a peasant. It's really fun that you're not being the noble paladin. You're starting off as something way more scummy. I do find it slightly odd that some of these illustrations are colour and some of them are black and white. The rogue there isn't coloured in, whereas the scribe, smuggler, etc. seem to be coloured in. The shield breaker isn't either. It's a little oddity. I'm guessing they had various artists working on it in different styles. It's not a deal breaker for me though. Now we get through to the advanced careers. Now these are ones which you can only gain access to later, and they give you extra abilities. Well, one of the things that first edition was terrible for was basically everybody always wanted to be an assassin, because they got +2 attacks. Or even was it +3 in the original? I can't quite remember, it's been too many years. But they had the most bonus attacks. So everybody wanted to go to one, because that made you the most powerful warrior. Obviously, getting more attacks in a round makes you deal more damage. Excellent advantage. And only the assassin had those attacks. But nowadays, in 2nd edition, we've got the captain here with 2 attacks. We've got the champion with 2 attacks. A crime lord only gets +1. The demon slayer gets 2. And you can see there's various additions to it where lots of warrior types get +2. The ghost strider. What else we got? The judicial champion, the knight of the inner circle, and all of these get the same amount of bonus attacks as the assassin, so you don't have to go through just that one class, or one career rather. There are many more paths to you, which fleshes out the game a lot, rather than all the warriors in the party all deciding to become assassins at the same time, just so they get bonus attacks. Outlaw chiefs. What else we got towards the end here? Sea captains. Targeter, Wizard Lord. And that's the careers. So you can see there's several more with bonus attacks there. We've got skills and talents, which are basically the same, although split up slightly differently. In first edition, there were only skills, and they varied from giving you bonus abilities to just being a skill. So Animal Care was the same as, I believe it was Quick Learner, which gave you bonus experience. And by the time this had come out, talents had been introduced in 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons, so they've introduced talents here, and they've split off these. So acute hearing, which lowers your target numbers for hearing, isn't a skill anymore. It's not something you can learn. Disarm, keen senses. Is there a quick learner? Am I remembering that right? We've got quick draw. No, there's no quick learner. Maybe I'm remembering a different system. Undead. You are a creature of undeath, hideously reanimated by necromantic magic. There's apparently a talent. We're on to equipment, which remains fairly basic. Because Warhammer isn't really about having too many fancy weapons. There's a bunch here. There's blunderbusses and different firearms, because the Warhammer world is more, well, it's got more technology than many fantasy worlds. Effects of alcohol, general equipment, transportation. We're on to the combat section. So, detailing the rules. Damage and healing, critical hits. So we've got some critical hit tables here. Now, these do not go to the length of Blood that I covered the other week, where it really made combat so much interesting. These are very limited. So we've got critical hit tables for arms, legs, head, and body. And you're going to roll on these a lot. Each one only has 10 entries, so there's only 40 different options. So after a number of fights, usually with people attacking the head or body, you'll be getting the same rolls again and again. So, you know, ear bashed, causing ears to ring and head to spin. Character cannot take any actions for 1 round. It's going to become quite common, and it's going to become a bit boring. Whereas in Blood, they really added something to the game by making everything so much more descriptive. Got natural damage, the galloping trots, scurvy madness, weevil cough. We're on to the magic system. Now, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1st edition came out before a lot of the Warhammer world was developed. It was very early days. So the magic system didn't quite suit the way the Warhammer world went. So this really changes the magic and makes it more in line with how the Warhammer world, the direction the writing took the Warhammer world. Arcane lore, lore of death, the lore of the heavens, the lore of light, just different types of magic here. Dark lords, the lore of chaos, the lore of necromancy, the various clerical magics, the lore of Sigmar, lore of Ulrich, got ritual magic, magic items, religion and beliefs, so we go through the different religions here. Hey, wow, Pie Week. This time of eating indulgence is the Halflings' sole religious festival. Yay! Go the Halflings. Gods of the Empire, so we've got Manan, Mor, Myrmidia, Reynald, Shalyar, and Sigmar. Ulrich, Verena as well. We go into the different orders, detailing each of the cults and religions. Forbidden worship, so we've got the gods of chaos, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. Whereas 1st edition detailed Malal, the 5th god of chaos. By the point this had come out, Malal had been long forgotten, so he's no longer featured in the game at all. Adventure elements, games mastering hints, a nice little section. Dealing with insanity, disorders, adding the darkness into the world here and keeping it a very gritty game. Mastering magic, rewards. Then we're on to the section about the Empire. Instead of focusing on the entirety of the old world, we're just detailing the Empire here. And it's an alright look into it. The civilized lands of the old world. So we can see Britannia, the Empire, Albion. They've left off Araby, but we've got the Reichland there. A quick look through those. The Bretonians, Kislevites, the Tyleans. We're on to a bestiary, so the monsters. Beastmen, goblins, lesser demons, skaven, mutants, orcs, skeletons, white zombies. There's not a lot, but it's very good because Warhammer uses these stat blocks, so you can very quickly get a grasp on a monster's attributes to use in combat, just at a glance. It's one of the major bonuses of the system, that it's kept so simple that all your attributes of a human and all the attributes of a monster can be quickly glanced at just on a small stat block. And we've got an adventure at the end, through the Drakwald. I won't linger on this for too long. Now, something I really do like is the designer's notes at the back here. They have detailed their thoughts. In some sense, the first decision was the easiest. Do we update the old rules and just throw everything out and start again? I knew right away that I wanted to keep key elements of the original game, the career system in particular. From the beginning, it was a matter of updating and streamlining more than starting from scratch. The only thing I wanted to jettison outright was the old magic system. This always meant as a stopgap, and somehow it had been a stopgap that had lasted nearly 2 decades. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay fans had long dissatisfied with it. A much clearer picture of what Warhammer Magic was all about had developed over the years in the miniatures game, books and novels. I wanted to create a magic system that reflected Warhammer Magic properly. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. 2 things I tackled first were characteristics and skills. The old stat line had a few characteristics derived from the minis game, such as initiative and leadership. And that seemed rather unnecessary or redundant. I streamed those down to the profile you now see. I added in things like its sanity points and fate points to profile, so all the key numbers for a character could be taken in at a glance, which they've done, and it's very nice. Skills were the next challenge. The original game had a large number of skills, except for many of them, like fleet-footed and very strong, weren't skills at all. They were more like special abilities. To make things more clear, I decided to break them into 2 categories, skills and talents. Also added rules for skill mastery, because the original system was binary. You either had a skill or you didn't. And the only way to get better at a skill was to increase your characteristic. It's now possible to be an excellent navigator, for example, without having Einstein's IQ. Another old Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay thing was the Naked Dwarf syndrome. Basic problem here, certain dwarf characteristics in the original rules were tougher unarmed than humans were in plate mail. The heart of Warhammer Fantasy. To me, the career system was always at the heart of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and I definitely wanted to preserve that. However, I had seen my share of problems with the original system. You had some careers like Road Warden that only had 1 skill, while others, the Outlaw, could have up to 15. While I did want a character's starting career to be at fate's whim, hence the random roll, I didn't want some careers to be blatantly awful. So it's no fun to be the guy playing the useless character who only gets to watch the other players have all the fun. To that end, I tried to make the basic career system similar in starting a number of advances, skills and talents they had. There remains a great deal of difference between them, but now you know every starting career has at least some redeeming features. And I really like that. It is a big problem with role-playing games where you start off a lot weaker than other characters. I've done it myself, where I played a character which was basically useless compared to everybody else, and I got to just stand around and watch everybody. It's not fun. You need something you're good at. And the career system now does mirror that. The advanced careers, I want to create distinct paths that can be used with different styles of play, and seem to have done that as well. So I really like the designer's notes. It lays out what they were planning to do, and I have to congratulate them. They did do it well. And then we've got the index at the back here, and some templates for spells, and the character sheet. which is very similar to the first edition one. Some adverts on the back here. Warhammer Fantasy Battle, the Black Library, Warhammer Warcry, muster your armies and prepare for battle in Warcry, collectible card game. Okay, I had no idea that existed. So that is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay's 2nd edition. I like it a lot. It's a great enhancement to the game. I think they've corrected a lot of mistakes that were made in the 1st edition, which had hung around for so long, while keeping what makes Warhammer a very interesting game to play and very different from your standard Dungeons and Dragons. But anyway, I think I've whittled on for quite long enough. I can see the count is up at 25 minutes or so. So thank you very, very much for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment below, as it does me massive favours with the YouTube algorithm. It really does. But most of all, as always, you look after yourselves. And I'll catch you later. Bye now.